She is my dark shadow. She is my dark shadow. I can't breathe with her around. I need her. I miss her. This telephone cord around my neck. My body in a river. I need her. This story gets really creepy and really dark. I'm just warning you. Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. Right, let's start out with a couple of shout outs. So we'll get through these, then we'll get to the story. Shout out to Doorframe. actual yes, Doorframe. Now, of course, that's a nickname. Don't know what Doorframe's real name is. But hey, to you, you definitely, I can promise you, you weren't in any way nominated for a shout out by your friend Clive, or Clivey Cuddles, as I believe he's also known. Shannon Scott Richardson, thanks for getting in touch. Carla Gray, thanks Carla, your posts and things are lovely. Matt Stapleton, thanks for your email today with the story in it. Matt sent me a story that I'm going to cover in a future episode that I think is going to be brilliant. And Joni Noel. Hello Joni, love that name, fantastic. Podcast news, I'll keep this quick. Merchandise is coming, I promise, at some point. Just give me a little bit more time, but it's not far away. I'm doing all the right steps towards it. I'm setting up what I need to do. I'm getting designs together. I am going to get there with it, okay? So, when you hear this story, if you've been listening to the past couple of weeks, you'll know how I got here. It involves mental health. It involves twins. And if you've listened to the last 2 episodes, you'll completely understand my fascination with this story. It brings together some of the things that I've talked about over the past couple of weeks. And I don't think this story can ever be found to have happened ever again in the world. It is completely unique. It gets creepy at points, it gets weird at points, and it's just fascinating. Okay, so buckle in or buckle up, whatever they settle down, whatever the saying is, however that goes. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Twins June and Jennifer Gibbons were sentenced indefinitely to Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital rather than prison at age 19. They were 2 of the youngest people ever to be sent there. Why were they sent there? On a charge of arson. It was one of the worst arson attacks to happen in England. Being sent to a prison which takes the form of a psychiatric hospital together at age 19 is only the beginning of the crazy story of June and Jennifer that I'm going to tell you. So June and Jennifer were born in 1963 in the UK. And their mother and father, having come from Barbados, when they got to the UK, they kind of moved about a lot. Here, there, they moved house a lot of the time. And kind of really a part of the reason was that the twins' dad was in the RAF. And sometimes this meant moving from place to place. It was all sort of England they moved around. I don't think that they ever really... I think they maybe had a wee brief period in Wales. They never came to Scotland, I don't think. I think it was all England based. So Dad, Aubrey, a great name, I love that. Aubrey, oh yes, what an excellent name. And Mother Gloria, when they had the twins, they were delighted to have identical twin girls. See, they wanted a really large family. And, well, they'd made a pretty good start at it with these two girls straight away. So, at a young age, when most children would begin speaking, I'm not quite sure what age that is, I'm sure it's dependent child to child, but when most children would have started to speak, June and Jennifer, they were slow to develop in their speech. And when they eventually did start to get words out and you know, a couple of words here and a sentence was beginning to come out, it was discovered by their parents that they had both a speech impediment, which meant that they were quite difficult to understand. The parents thought they'll grow out of this. They'll learn proper speech, you know, as they get a little bit older. They're only, you know, what, maybe 2. Let's give them a chance. Their speech will improve. But as they grew into toddlers and reached age 3 going into age 4, their parents and everyone around them, they were having real difficulty in understanding the girls. However, the twins could quite easily understand each other. They could communicate between themselves perfectly fine. It was just everyone else around them couldn't quite understand what they were saying. Now, the girls were inseparable. So like I said, they were identical. Especially at a young age, really identical in looks, in their mannerisms, in the way they walked. They really were like one. The twins often used between them signs and hand signals to communicate with each other. Nobody in the family had a clue what any of these hand signals or things that they would do to communicate to each other meant. Nobody could quite penetrate that world of communication between the two sisters. There's a funny moment where Aubrey describes that if you asked one of the girls a question, she would glance at her sister before answering the question. So, for example, right, you say to June, do you want a drink of water? She would look at Jennifer before answering. And often, the answer would come in the form of a nodding head, because the girls, they were becoming really frustrated, even at 4 years old, by the fact that no one could understand them. Every time they had to say something, they had to repeat it, and it still wouldn't be understood. So they found other ways to communicate. Where one of the twins went, the other went. Whatever one of them was playing with, the other was also playing with. What one would eat, so would the other. Now, a lot of their behaviour, right, okay, at this point, a lot of their behaviour just gets put down to twinness. I know twinness isn't a word, but you know what I mean. Twin behaviour, okay? So their parents, their family, everyone else from the outside world is looking at them and going, yes, it's odd that they don't speak very much to anyone else except between themselves, but that's maybe just a very young age twin thing. It's just twinness. And if that's not a word, I'm trademarking it as a word. But by age 5, the girls are so frustrated by the fact that people struggle to understand them, that they give up speaking to other people entirely. They will now only communicate with each other. They're tired of having to repeat themselves and constantly be asked sorry, what was that you said? Or I didn't quite get that. Or yeah, so it's too much for them. So age 5, they think, nah, fuck this. We're not talking to anybody else except to each other. Quite quickly, that just becomes a way of life in the house. The family come to accept that the girls only communicate with each other in their own special language, but otherwise, they're completely silent. I say special language. Now, it's not that they were actually speaking in any sort of special language. I think they were just speaking to each other normally. It's just that because they both had the same speech impediment, they could understand each other. There was no problem. June knew exactly what Jennifer was saying when she was saying these words, and vice versa. It's just that people around them, they couldn't understand it, so they then assumed, oh, they're speaking a special language. Well, they weren't really. They just were understanding each other. I mean, when I say it was a way of life, of course Aubrey and Gloria are worried about their daughters, but they kind of just put it down to, it's a phase. The girls are so close. They don't go, oh well, that's fine. Our daughters, well, they don't speak to us. They are concerned, but they also just think, well, there's just something about them being twins. They just, they just like to communicate with each other. Now they're in school, aged 5, and what they're going through at school is very, very problematic. Teachers were having a really tough time with the girls because they just wouldn't speak. Their parents would be called to the school and teachers would demand to know what the hell was going on. But the parents just always had to say the same thing. Well, they won't speak to us either. So they don't speak to us at home. They're not going to speak to you in a classroom. They're only going to speak to each other. Right, now for me, this is 1978. And I feel the girls should have been seeing a therapist. I mean, for a starters, where the fuck was a speech therapist in all of this? And where was a psychiatrist in some of this? Because this is not normal behaviour. And you can say as much as you like, oh, it's a twin thing, it's a whatever. Nah, there's something that needs looked at. And I'm not playing the blame game here. I'm not blaming teachers. I'm not blaming their parents. It was maybe the time. Maybe people didn't know what to do. I'm not sure. But I just think if that was happening now and there was two, 6-year-olds who were only communicating with each other and not the outside world, other people would be involved. But 1978, it was a problem, but it wasn't a problem enough to bring in external help. What they're about to do as they grow up, it just gets weirder. And it gets dangerous. And I guess the point that I was making about there being no intervention from a therapist is that actually what's going to happen for the rest of their lives potentially could have been prevented had a therapist been implemented at a young age. By age 10, the girls are in the same primary school that they've been in, but teachers are at their absolute limit with the girls. They are completely exasperated by this point. The other kids in the school, they're bullying them. They're causing them real problems. They call them the creepy twins, the weird twins, the silent twins. These are the names that go around. I mean, for a start, being a twin is not, I don't assume, necessarily easy in any way whatsoever for anyone. But on top of that, you're two people who don't speak to anyone else. You don't communicate with the world. It's got to be tough. For everyone. Not just for them, but for everyone, it's tough. I went out with a twin once. Yeah, I didn't like it. I liked her, I think, but I just didn't really like going out with a twin. I mean, this was like, we're going back now. I was about age 12, 13. And I mean, I was a screaming homosexual. So I was clearly going through the, I know, I'll get a girlfriend and the world will never know that I am gay phase. You know what I mean? So I'd like go out with my twin girlfriend for a wee McDonald's or something, and then come home and like put on some Kylie, put on some Madonna, dance around my room and wonder to myself, why can I not stop thinking about Keanu Reeves? So, oh yeah. So it gets so bad at school for June and for Jennifer. The bullying, the teachers' constant pressure to make them speak. The girls, actually, they start to get out of school early because that way they can avoid having to walk home with their schoolmates. I mean, it's rough. It's really, really rough. And I'm going to throw this in here while I've got the chance. The bullying and the now growing community feeling of, it's the strange girls, was about 80% to do with their silence and their behaviour. But, and this doesn't get alluded to in lots of the reading that I did, or lots of the things that I watched, there's definitely a racial issue attached to it as well. When you hear people reflect on June and Jennifer years later, it's in the subtext of what they're saying. It's there. You can just hear it in the background of what they're saying. These two girls lived in a primarily white area of England, and they were the only two non-white students in the school. So you put that on top of the fact that they have this behaviour where they will not communicate with anyone except each other. And yeah, that's the big mess. But I don't think you can put the racial element aside and pretend it's not a part of the narrative. I'm quite happy to name the beast here. I think lots of documentaries try and swerve this issue. And they put the girls were ostracised down to their secret bond and their secrets of only communicating with each other. There was a racial element there. There was. So there's a documentary I watched, and there's a teacher who describes them, and he talks about how they would never move very quickly. Even at the age of 13, they had a strange calmness about them. They didn't have that kind of like mental energy that a 13-year-old's got, where they're just like, I'm full of energy and I'm going to throw my face off a wall and I'm going to just jump up and down and I'm going to play music really loudly and do all those things. They just didn't have that. They just had this utter calm about them. So now they're in secondary school, they're 14, and someone decides to get a child psychologist involved. Why did this not happen before? It's taken to 14 for somebody to say, these girls need to see someone. So a psychiatrist sees the girls together and separately over a 2-week period, and then he makes his diagnosis. His diagnosis is selective mutism. I'm so into selective mutism. I am so interested in it. I think it's absolutely fascinating. Not into doing it, of course. I mean, that would be one pretty terrible podcast, wouldn't it? Be silent for the whole time. You'd get Shouty Man, you'd get some other music, and you'd get the end music, and then that would be it. So that would be pretty shit. But it's fascinating, I think, when people stop speaking and they choose to stop communicating through speech. So between the psychiatrists, the parents, and the teachers in school, they decide that June and Jennifer would be better off in a different school. A school for children with different learning needs. So the move to another school is set up. The girls are told, you're going to be moved to a separate school. And in this school, it's going to be people who are used to dealing with odd behaviours. Now at the school where they're going to move to, there's a teacher, and the teacher is told, okay, you're going to get these two twins, okay? And she gets these reports through about them. She's not even met them at this point. She's not met them. But the reports describe June and Jennifer as negative, secretive, challenging. The report says they don't speak English. They won't speak to anyone else except each other. And even then, it's in a secret language, which we believe to be Afrikaans. In the report, she's told that they have weird behaviours. They walk in unison. So wherever they were going, step by step, they would walk in unison the whole time. When it came to meals, they sat down at the same time. They ate their food in complete unison. From start to finish, every meal. Everything on the plate in the same order. So the teacher is a bit freaked out because she's thinking, oh God, this is huge. I've got these two girls coming to this school, and I need to really think about how I'm going to deal with these girls. Now, at their new school, it's decided that the girls will be secretly filmed by the use of a two-way mirror, and they will be recorded by the use of some secret microphones. I mean, I'm not sure I'm okay with that. And I know that people were trying to get to the bottom of it, and that they thought, well, with secret microphones, we can at least hear what they're saying to each other. But still, I mean, come on, it's not cool. It's not cool to record them or film them when they don't know that they're being filmed. So this teacher who's got the girls, she's all about the two-way mirrors and the secret microphones. And after a couple of weeks, she discovers the girls are speaking English. I mean, of course they are. They'd been born in England. They'd been raised in England, and their parents spoke English. Again, this is just another racial assumption. It's another total racial prejudice. Oh, they're speaking Afrikaans. Why would they be? Why would they be speaking Afrikaans? I mean, I know the whole situation's bizarre, but you cannot just presume that that's what they're speaking. Come on. So at the school, of course, same thing. Girls wouldn't communicate with anyone except each other, but what they would do is if they needed to tell something to the teacher, they would write it down. So if they needed to go to the toilet, do whatever, they would write a note, and it would be given to the teacher, and that was their way of communicating. So their home life was getting progressively odder also. They'd stop speaking to their parents, and they'd spend most of their time in their bedroom playing with their dolls. They had a younger sister, Rosie, and she was the only family member that the girls would actually communicate with. So in their bedroom, they would use their dolls to recreate real life scenarios, things that were going on in the outside world that they weren't really a part of. So a boy doll meets a girl doll and they fall in love. a group of girl dolls. They all get together and they have a party. And so they were living through these dolls in a way that they weren't actually experiencing these things themselves. It wasn't too long before they decided actually they didn't really want to communicate with their sister Rosie anymore. And they just stopped talking to her. And now that was it. She was the last of the family members who was ever spoken to. It just stopped. Now, in the house, meal times. I was really wondering about this. I was really questioning this and thinking, how the hell did that go? What happens when it comes to dinner time? Well, this is what happens. The girls won't eat at the table with the rest of the family. Instead, they eat all of their meals in their bedroom with the door closed. Gloria or Aubrey would take meals up on a tray, leave them at the door, and go back downstairs. June and Jennifer just would not eat a single thing in front of a family member. They wouldn't even take a drink of water in front of another family member. Teachers at school said that when lunchtime came around, they would queue up together in the school cafeteria. They would sit together and they would eat their food in complete unison, just looking down at the plate the whole entire time, never looking up. I mean, the image of that is just so weird. So to just zoom out for one little moment, and this is interesting. At this point, I'm guessing you're probably thinking along the same lines that I am, that the girls are now so dependent on each other that the idea of separation for them would be absolutely terrifying. Well, that's what I thought too, until I got to this bit of the story. The twins wanted desperately to be separated. June wrote a letter to her teacher and it said the following: "We will speak if you separate us, but if we are together, we won't. Separating us is a good idea because then we can be normal. We can't be normal together." Okay, so everyone around them then starts to think, wait there, have we got this wrong? Are these girls actually desperately unhappy with each other? So, well, what do we do? What do we do now? What do we do now that they've said, in letter form, we want to be separated? What's coming up here through this is that actually they didn't like being twins. They hated the fact that they came as a package. But, and this is where I think it's fascinating, they had created an entire world around them which seemed like they only wanted to be with each other. So the school said, yes, okay, we're listening. We're willing to do this. If it will break you out of this world that you've trapped yourself in, where you won't speak to anyone else, we're happy to separate you. And this is what they did. They put the decision into the girls' hands. They said, okay, one of you will move school and one of you will stay here. But it's over to you to decide who goes where. Not quite sure where their parents fit in that moment of decision making. It seemed that a lot of that was coming from the school. A lot of that drive to respond to their want to be separated was coming from the school. So it gets discussed back and forth, who's going to go where, who's going to do what. When it comes to the reality of it, What it brings about is nothing short of complete carnage. The twins, they begin to loudly argue with each other. Now, these girls haven't spoken in public to anyone except themselves since they were toddlers. And now here they are screaming at one another about who's moving school and who's staying. Teachers and pupils and everyone around them were fucking so shocked because they just had never heard these girls be so loud. They just had never heard them be that vocal. What was becoming really clear was that the twins had a love and a hatred for each other at the same time. They were really drowning in their codependency. So up to this point, right, I've talked largely about them as a unit. So let me give you just a bit of a picture of the differences between them, because we're going to need that as the story moves forward. June was seen as the slightly stronger of the two, the more dominant, the more responsive of the twins. And that was the opinion really of the teachers and family. June was thought to just have a slight edge over Jennifer. Jennifer, it's thought, is the one who was really unhappy in the world. She wrote in her diary at a young age that she felt June wasn't her real twin. She said, although we look identical, and we are identical, June just doesn't really have my mind. So, and I hate to do this, right? I hate to give like a kind of black and white overview of ways to think about people, because that's just like stupid. No person can ever be, defined in that way. It's impossible to do that. But for us to move forward with the story, we do need a really clear picture of the differences between the girls. So, when it came to the idea of them moving school, teachers agreed that they felt June would survive better in a new environment. They felt she had more emotional resilience than Jennifer. They said June would cope with a move, Jennifer would just crumble. So we're getting to this idea now that June is just the slightly more dominant of the two. The separation never happened. And the reason is that the girls, when it became a reality and it became time to actually decide who was going to what school, they went into what gets described as a catatonic state. They couldn't actually go through with the reality of being separated. So they stayed in the same school and they continued the same behaviours, only talking to each other. No communication with anyone else. June remembers a conversation that they had in their bedroom at age 16 where they discussed the fact that they were 16 years old. They didn't mix with anyone. They didn't meet boys. They didn't go to parties, to discos. And they wondered about the future. June says she remembers asking Jennifer, will we always be in this bedroom? Is this us for the rest of our lives? I have to say, when I got to this point in the story, I also started to wonder the same thing. I thought, the hell is the future going to hold for these two girls? So by now the girls are 17 and the time has come to leave school. So they leave school. They sign on to the dole. The dole is what unemployed people get in the UK. I don't think it's called the dole anymore. Well, that's probably really old to call it the dole. I don't know what it's called. I don't even know what it's called in other countries. So it's basically just state benefits. So it's basically you're just getting money from the state. So they would spend their time in their bedroom watching the world, and I'm not even kidding here, through binoculars. They actually got themselves some binoculars with which to watch the world. So they would actually spy into people's houses and spy into what was going on down that street and down that little place. I just think it's so peculiar that they're not out there doing it. They've locked themselves in this bedroom and they're watching it. The girls secretly sent away for a leaflet for a course that they really wanted to attend. And the course was called The Art of Conversation. I mean, right, you and I take chit-chat for granted. We learn that at a very young age. We learn to exchange those, hi, how are you? Oh, yeah, I'm fine. Oh, it's cold today, isn't it? Oh, yeah, it's freezing. Oh, what have you been up to? Oh, not much. Well, no, okay, nice to chat with you. Bye. But, that sounds like the shittest conversation in the world, by the way. I don't really want to have that with anyone. Quality conversation only, thank you. But if you've never done that, if you've never ever had that, then yes, you would need to learn it as a skill as an adult, because you're just not grown up ever having done it. I mean, I know that sounds really bizarre and it's so basic, but if you've never done it, how would you know it? June said, even if we wanted to talk to our mum and dad, we wouldn't know how, because we haven't spoken to anyone else except each other since we were 4 years old. So we don't know how to do that. Anyway, they didn't go on the course. They were too scared. They saw the leaflet. They were really into the idea. They were really excited about going and learning the art of conversation. But at the last moment, they just decided, no, they were too scared. They didn't want to do it. The relationship between June and Jennifer was tumultuous. It was often not great. They would fight with each other on a daily basis. They'd have long periods of anger with each other. I mean, they were cooped up in a bedroom. And they had this mix of real love for each other, but sometimes pure hatred also. They kept diaries. They were avid diary writers. They loved their diaries. The diaries later became public. There's a point in June's diary where she writes this: my sister is my dark shadow. Jennifer will always be my one and only torment. Okay, dark. At this age, about 17, they both decided that they wanted to be writers. So they got typewriters, and in their bedroom they would spend hours and hours writing their stories. They wanted to be novelists. They wanted to create great novels and send them out to the world. June says, we just wanted our family to be proud of us. They had no other way to be proud of us. We didn't ever just want to be known as the girls who don't speak. We wanted something that we could say, be proud of us because we've written a novel. I mean, I've read some of their writings because they're online. And yet, you know, although they're written by a young person, with a young person's kind of ideals about it, the writing itself is actually of a really high standard. I think the two of them, they show a lot of intelligence in what they do. It's just obviously you're not getting that verbally from them. So it's coming out through the things that they write, or it's coming out in other ways, but it's just not necessarily coming out through their bloody voice. So they get to age 18, not working. They're in this room all day, every day, just the two of them. And between them, they decide they want freedom. They want out of that bedroom and they want to go and live a bit of life. They just want to go and do something. And this is how they go about it. At the school that they had been at, there were two American boys who both June and Jennifer, they'd taken a bit of a shine to these boys. They hadn't spoken to them, of course, but they basically just fancied them from a distance. How do these boys get described? Well, let me tell you. They get described as all American boys. Clearly, June and Jennifer did not get my memo in which I explain clearly that I do not like the phrase all American. It means nothing. I'm not going to go down this road again. I'm not going to rant about it anymore. Okay? Just stop saying all American. It doesn't mean anything. It means fuck all. Right, so the girls decide that they're going to get all dressed up. They're going to put their makeup on. And they're going to go and hunt down these boys. And they succeed. And the boys are really flattered. They're like, oh yeah, okay, there's two sisters. Yeah, we remember them from school. They kind of didn't say an awful lot. But, alright, we'll get on board with this. And the four of them start to hang out. Now this is pretty major for June and Jennifer. This is them really smashing through their world. Do you know what I mean? Like they're making a big step forward here. Big step forward. They decide to make an even bigger step forward, and that is they're going to start speaking in public. They're just going to start talking. Okay? So it starts with these boys that they've met. They start to just have conversation with these boys. Let's just get a picture of who these guys were. Well, they're not good guys, that's for sure. They were petty criminals who had been sent from the USA to this school in England. The parents of these brothers in the USA had got really frustrated with the fact that these two guys like to set fire to a lot of things. And their way of dealing with it was to send them overseas to a school in England. And that just happened to be the same school that June and Jennifer were at. So the four of them are hanging out. They're having a great time. It's a good few months of drinking, partying, sex, staying up, staying out all night long for June and Jennifer with these two guys. I mean, this is major for them. This is absolutely major. This is a huge move on in their life. But the relationship between the two sisters, well, again, it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down all the time. It's not functioning particularly well when they're with these two other guys. There is a lot of jealousy about who wants to date what boy and who fancies who, etc., etc. And they start fighting a lot. When I say fighting, I mean physical fighting. And not your usual kind of siblings hitting each other, annoying each other kind of thing. Much, much more serious. During one of their arguments, Jennifer wraps a telephone cord around June's throat in an attempt to strangle her to death. June drags Jennifer by the hair to a river. She pushes her in and she holds her head under the water, attempting to drown her. Now, I mean, there's fighting with your sibling and then there's like trying to drown or strangle them. That's a whole other beast. I once threw a hoover at my brother. I was about 13. I would have been about 13. He would have been about 17. And we argued, just like stupid teenage brothers will do. We'd having an argument, I remember, upstairs in the house. Mum and Dad were out. We were having an argument upstairs in the house. He was at the top of the stairs and I pushed him down the stairs. And then I picked up the first thing I could find to throw at him, and that just happened to be a Hoover. And I just threw the Hoover at him. Now, in my defence, my brother was older than me, taller than me, much, much bigger than me. He's like big and broad, my brother. Do you know what I mean? He's like a complete opposite of me. He's just like this really big, big, broad guy. So, I mean, picking up a Hoover was my only defence, Your Honour. That was all I could do in that moment. And yeah, I feel that would stand up in the court of law because he's way bigger than I am. So, now it must have been... I will add, neither the fall down the stairs did one bit of damage. He was absolutely fine, and when I threw the Hoover I actually missed him, so there was no damage involved. So if you're going to try and take me to a court of law, brother, forget it. For the family, right, of June and Jennifer, this must just have been the weirdest time. So they've had these two girls silent all their life, and now here they are screaming at each other all the time. So the girls, they were not enjoying each other's company, but what they were enjoying was hanging out with these American bad boys. They were getting into some petty crime. They were breaking into houses, bit of shoplifting here and there, bit of theft, and then out of nowhere the boys suddenly up and go back to America, and the girls are left gutted. At age 19, the boys are back in America, and they start going out at nights and hanging around the neighbourhood. And, as June puts it, they were looking for trouble. Then they're about to do something really, really stupid. They decide to set fire to a factory in their town, a tyre factory. They go, they get petrol, they get matches, and in the dark of night, they set fire to this huge factory, and it is a big, big fire. June writes in her diary, and this will become important. She writes that at the time, this was her greatest achievement. Along with the help of Jennifer, of course, she describes that she loved to watch that fire burn. She loved to see the firemen running into that building, and she loved the fact that the police were looking for an arsonist. That was a real thrill for June. It doesn't take long for the police to find June and Jennifer. A witness came forth and said that he had seen those two creepy twins, as he called them, hanging around on the night of the fire. And when the police came to the house to talk with June and Jennifer, they look at their diaries and they see it. So everything that I just said to you there, those words, it's all in June's diary. The whole entire story of how they started the blaze and how much they loved to watch it burn. So they're arrested and they go to prison for 7 months to wait for their trial in court. So what happens when they go into prison? Well, they once more retreat into silence. They will not communicate with anyone, only with each other. They go into this cycle in prison where they share a cell and then they have like a massive argument. and they ask to be separated. And as soon as they are separated, they then become hysterical about the fact that they're separated. They get put back together. Another fight begins. So then another separation begins, and so on and so on and so on. And for 7 months, that went on. They just could not be in the same cell, and they also could not be in the same cell. They were seeing psychiatrists, they had lawyers, but they just wouldn't speak to these people. Then they eventually came round to the fact that actually, do you know what? You're in prison and you're about to go to court. You're going to have to start to speak to people. You're going to have to do it. Now, this is odd. I've never heard of this before, but the prison actually, they put a phone in their cell so that they could speak to their therapist via the phone, because they wouldn't talk to anyone face to face. So June, during one of these telephone conversations, tells the therapist she's considering killing her sister. She says Jennifer hears voices and she has strange delusions. She tells them all about the attempted strangling with the telephone cord and the attempted drowning. She says she feels that Jennifer is the weaker of the two of them, and that she needs more help than she does. Psychiatrists ask, why won't you speak to your parents? And June says, I've never really had a conversation with them in my life, and I wouldn't know how to. The psychiatrist they're talking to diagnoses the onset of early schizophrenia. He reports that the girls are dangerous and that they could harm other people or themselves. So the trial comes around, the arson trial. Both girls plead guilty. Well, they've nothing else that they can do. I mean, it was all written down in the diary. It's pretty clear what they did. The girls are sent to Broadmoor Hospital at age 19. Now, just to explain Broadmoor, it's one of 3 major psychiatric high security hospitals in England. It's a place for people who have committed serious crimes but need psychiatric care rather than prison. The psychiatrist said at the time, the worst thing you could do for these twins is send them to prison because it just won't help. He says they're a year or 2 away from their schizophrenia reaching its peak. Broadmoor was the only hospital that would accept them. The girls had confessed in court to the crimes, and they were told they would be sent there for an indefinite period. And if you heard last week the episode I did on mental institutions and on insane asylums, it's again this idea of you come into it, you're then just going through a cycle. You could be in that for a lifetime because you're just trapped in the system now. June and Jennifer's parents, they came to say goodbye to them on the day that they were institutionalised. The 4 of them, they cried together. Aubrey, their father, kissed each of his daughters on the cheek and said, "Be good now." So what happens in the institution? Well, they are separated. Separate wards. They still won't speak to anyone. They would write letters which nurses would deliver daily between the 2 sisters. After a period of time, they were given tranquilizers, and gradually they did start to independently speak to nurses. Mainly the reason for deciding to speak to nurses was because what they wanted to ask was, can we please be put together on the same ward? But that request was refused. So at the time, a biographer was allowed into the hospital to see them. They'd become quite big news, June and Jennifer. There was a lot of kind of fascination around them, around their behaviour, around the arson, a lot of stuff. People wanted to know, people wanted to hear. And she gets to see the letters that are going between the sisters. And in one of the letters being delivered by the nurses, Jennifer writes to June, "You talk of becoming old spinsters and being left on the shelf. But I know that I am going to die before you. I just know this. Love, Jennifer." So the girls are, they're talking normally now. And everyone thinks, well, they're showing lots of signs of improvement. But they're still not allowed out of the hospital. And this goes on for years. They go through so many appeals, so many court appointments to try and be moved to even just like a less secure unit somewhere, but it just keeps failing all the time. And so no, they're still stuck in Broadmoor. It takes 5 years, but it is eventually decided that they can move to a less secure unit somewhere else in England. So they're not being freed, of course. They're not being freed at this point. It's just that they're moving to a place where they can continue treatment, but that they can also be with each other. The biographer is continuing to visit the girls separately and together. And she hears from both of them something that sets real alarm bells off in her head. She says that both sisters say to her independently, "One of us is going to have to die for the other to be able to exist. Because we can't live together. We cannot exist, both of us." And it's going back to, if you remember, when I told you June wrote the letter to her school teacher and said, "Please separate us because we will speak independently. But if you put us together, we can never be normal." So the biographer is hearing these words and she's thinking, this is probably a part of their mental health issues. It's probably a part of the schizophrenia. It's probably just a part of that. So the day before they're about to move hospital, they're sitting together in the ward that June was in, and Jennifer says, "Well, at last we are free of Broadmoor." She then turns to June and she says, "I'm not feeling very well." And she says, "I really hope I feel better tomorrow when we're going to make the move to the other hospital." The next day comes and June is packing up her belongings when a nurse comes to her with the worst news ever. Jennifer is dead. She's died of an abnormal swelling of the muscles in her heart. It's a condition in which your heart swells and swells and swells to a point where it stops beating for a second. Now, it's a condition which is so rare, and although your heart stops beating, you come back to life quite quickly from it and it starts to reduce. It's almost never fatal, but it's killed Jennifer. The hospital staff let June sit with Jennifer's dead body for half an hour. Aubrey and Gloria are brought to the hospital and they say their goodbyes to Jennifer. After the funeral, June is still sent to the other hospital and she starts to do really well. She's grieving her sister, of course she is. But she's fully communicating with everyone now, verbally. She's actually quite popular in the hospital. She takes up exercise, she makes friends. And when the time comes for her to be paroled and sent back to her family, they throw a big massive party for her to celebrate June. Because, like I say, she did it exceptionally well. She suddenly came alive as a person. She just was really vibrant in that hospital on her own. June had spent 13 years in institutions, and this was, for the first time, I think this is mad. This gave me real pause for thought. She's now about to go out into the world on her own for the first time that she will ever have done that. As someone who now speaks, it must have been the weirdest thing for her and for her family. June says at this point she was living every day for both herself and Jennifer. She says, I thought I'd never get over my sister's death, but it's made me stronger. So it's June 1994 and June is out. She's back home with her mum and her dad. Do you remember I said earlier on about those secret recordings that they did when the girls were at school? The two-way mirror and the secret microphones. Once June is out, it all gets shown to her. It's so weird. You can find this clip online. It's her watching herself and Jennifer at 14 years old and how they behaved. And she's like laughing about it. She says, we just always thought that was all a game. The eating together, the walking together. To us, it was just a silly game. So I'll finish this story by giving you some thoughts and some words from the people involved. Aubrey says, as a parent, all you can do is pick up the pieces. People always want to blame the parents, but as a parent, you're only ever doing the best that you can. Jennifer's gravestone has this message written by June. We once were two. We two made one. We are no more two, although our life be one. And June says of her life, it was a mess. It was a big mess. I can't go back and change it. I can't forget Jennifer, and I can't forget Broadmoor. And then she says this, and it's just, I think, such a perfect way to end this story. She says, I'm still a twin today. Jennifer might have been dead for a few years, but I'm still a twin, and I always will be. And so ends the story of Jennifer and June Gibbons. Okay, well, what the hell do you make of that? I cannot wait to hear what you've got to say. It's a real fucking mind bender of a story. Anyway, I'll update you now because I hate to tell a story and then leave people going like, but what the fuck happened next? I don't know why I did that in that accent, but I hate to leave it without any sort of update. So June's still alive. She is living in Brighton, which is a wee seaside town just outside of London. Well, not too far from London. She does odd jobs here and there. She doesn't really have like one sort of career. She just got odd jobs. She was given lots of offers to do TV shows and interviews and talk about her and her sister, and she kind of refused most of those. Her mum and her dad. Well, Aubrey, I believe, has passed away, but Gloria is still alive and I think still living in the house that the family grew up in. I think what really piqued my interest with this story is the same thing as I rattled on about last week. It's mental health not being picked up at an early enough stage. And June actually backs this up entirely because she did give one rare interview. And she says, Broadmoor was really the mistake here. That was the big error. Those girls should have been given 2 years in a regular prison for the arson, but that actually they were put into that psychiatric system as a punishment for their lack of communication with the world. And I think there's something in that. I don't think she's wrong. I think she's right. I think it was, let's send them to the, excuse me for using this term, loony bin, because actually, let's look at the arson as less of a crime and look at the fact that they have this weird behaviour. I think the behaviour could have been tackled properly just by the right psychologist. And you can't go back, you can't change things, there's no point fucking lamenting stuff that could have been done. But I said it in the beginning, why was there no fucking psychiatrist given to them at age 4 and 5 and, challenging these issues? But it just never happened. So this is where we are now. Jennifer's dead, June's out in the world on her own. It just never needed to be this fucking situation that it ended up being. Okay. Talking of communicating with the world, I've said the word world so many times in the past 5 seconds that now all I've got in my head is heal the world. Remember that shit Michael Jackson song? Make it a better place for you and for me. Anyway, I'm not going to subject it to my terrible singing voice, but that's all I've got going around my head. Episode 50 is around the corner. It's not far away. Now, if you got in touch with me and said you wanted to help with episode 50 but you've yet to send me your stuff, can you please get it to me? I have a lot of the material, but I just want to make sure that I've not missed anybody who said they wanted to get in touch. I have another favour, fuck's sake. You're going to be like, oh my god, Barry, what the fuck? How many more favours can you ask for? Community podcast, everyone. Community. We're all in this together. It's not just about me. I'm looking for 5 people only, who are willing to talk openly about their work. Right, I'm leaving it loose. I'm saying BUA, fisherman, policeman, postman, lawyer, sex worker, performer, if you work in a chocolate factory, you work in a morgue, if you are a gardener, anything, absolutely anything in the world. I want to connect with 5 different people. And now here's how it's going to work. I'm going to set a time and say, if you've gotten in touch with me by this time, I'm just going to pick 5 at random. And I'll tell you the reason I'm going to do that is because I am terrible at saying no. I mean, it could explain a lot about my life. It could explain a lot about the situations I've got myself into. But I am really bad at saying no. And so if you get in touch with me, my instinct and my heart is going to be like, oh no, I'd hate to say no to anybody. But I realise that with this number of people, I do have to get better at doing it. With the love episode for episode 40, I got myself in a very tangled situation where so many people wanted to help me with episode 40 that I then had to say, can you then transfer that and I'll help you with episode 50. And out of that, I've still got lots of different people's information and stories and brilliant things that I'm somehow trying to find a way for. So to avoid getting into that mess again, what I'll do is I'll say by Tuesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon UK time, if you've emailed me, if you've contacted me, that's the cut-off point. So I'm just going to pick 5, and if you're not one of the ones that gets picked for that, please don't take it personally. Please don't stop listening to the podcast. That's what I would hate. So if you want to be one of those 5 people, you can email me, extraordinarystoriespodcast@gmail.com, or find me on social media. Don't worry, it's not going to be something where I'm going to ask you to reveal your deepest, darkest secrets. There's some things I'm curious about at the moment that I think permeate all jobs in the world, all professions in the world. And I just want a nice, fun chat about those. Okay, so 1 o'clock, Tuesday. Yeah. Okay, I hope that's okay. So, as always, get me on Facebook, get me on Instagram, get me on Twitter. I'm not hard to find. I'm on Patreon if you want to support the podcast. As always, if you know a great story, an extraordinary story, get in touch.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face, let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over.
Oh, for fuck's sake, I think I just said Jessica. Oh, Jessica. Her name's fucking Jennifer. Why would I start calling her Jessica? No. Oh, fuck. I think I just said... Oh, no. What? That'll be fine. Well, I don't know what to do. Stop. Yeah, it'll be fine. Right, okay, let's go. Go back. Barry, hurry up. Get back to it. Come on. Fine, go. You know, they'd use their doys. Their doys? Doys.
Let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over.